I'm Gina, and my assessment tool is synonym and antonym vocabulary. Synonyms and antonyms are directly discussed in the Common Core State Standards. This standard states that by the end of 4th grade, students must demonstrate understanding of vocabulary words by relating them to their opposites or their antonym, and to their words that are similar but not identical in meaning or their synonyms. Since it's impossible to assess the full extent of a person's vocabulary knowledge, assessing their ability to identify synonyms and antonyms can be an indicator of basic language understanding. The purpose of synonyms and antonyms is to expand and build on a child's vocabulary. Another great purpose of using synonyms and antonyms is to allow the student to make a better word choice in their writing and speaking language. When dealing with synonyms, students need to understand and be able to identify words that have similar meanings. On the other side, antonyms require students to identify and understand words that have opposite meanings. Students are required to be able to apply this knowledge and use synonyms and antonyms effectively in both their oral and writing language. It has been found that word knowledge is strongly related to reading comprehension. In order to develop word knowledge, this means expanding vocabulary. According to the article written by Webb, students may struggle when learning synonyms because some synonyms may be substituted effectively in some contexts but not in others. For example, the two words strong and powerful. Tea may be strong but not powerful. Engines may be powerful but not strong. Learning synonyms and antonyms may be especially challenging when working with students that do not have English as their first language. I will discuss a reading about this a little bit more later. A struggle that teachers may be faced with is the type of assessment to be administered. An assessment can require students to read words in isolation and not in any context, then provide a synonym or antonym. An assessment could be given where the word is selected from a passage or a story, and this may aid the student in determining the meaning of the word by using its context. Another way synonyms and antonyms could be assessed is by the teacher reading the words to the student or having the student read them on their own. If the student is being read the words, this is addressing their listening skills. If the student is reading the words, this is assessing their reading vocabulary. The McAndrews book, Diagnostic Literacy Assessments and Instructional Strategies, provides a synonym and antonym assessment that is broken into grade levels. To administer this assessment, begin with the grade level below the student being tested. If they score at a 60% or the frustrational level, move to a grade below and continue testing. Continue to assess the student until they reach the frustration level. At this level, read the words out loud to the student and mark with a different colored pen so you know that that's the grade level that we read out loud. Determine the student's reading level by finding the grade level at which they scored a 70% or above. Students that score below their grade level are at risk and may require more attention or intervention when it comes to vocabulary, especially before or during a new text. Scoring below grade level means that the student does not apply new words when writing or speaking and often uses words in the wrong context. When introducing new words to students, it's most beneficial to use visual, auditory, or kinesthetic methods. One example is the graphic organizer that I've attached in the bottom of my paper and will explain here. So in the center here is where the word goes. And on top is the definition. This is called a word map. On this side is the synonym and the antonym, and below is an image or feelings box. This is where the student can write in any way that they can personalize with this new word they've learned. Stuart Webb conducted a study that looked at the effects of his learning synonyms, and he looked at the effects of learning synonyms with English as a second language. His study consisted of Japanese students learning a new vocabulary in English. They wanted to determine if it was easier for these students to learn two new words that are synonyms or two new words that are unrelated. The findings showed that students scored higher for words with known synonyms versus the words without synonyms. This study provides evidence that learners may acquire knowledge of synonyms more easily than non-synonyms. During the study, students were also asked which terms were easier to use in a sentence. students selected from the set of known synonyms. In another study done by Deborah Elliott and her colleagues, they studied students' vocabulary knowledge in 3 different classrooms: kindergarten, first grade, and 4th grade. This study explained that visual aids and graphic organizers were an effective way to help students think about words in new and different ways, just like the graphic organizer I had showed. They went on to say that teaching with graphic organizers encourages students to actively participate in the learning process. You're more likely to get students to participate with a graphic organizer than you are by giving them a list of words and telling them to find the definition. The 4th grade classroom used synonym and antonym wheels to deepen the meanings of these words, so just another variation of a graphic organizer. The last study I will discuss was done by Professor Rima Al-Jarf. This study was done to make connections in vocabulary instruction. Synonyms and antonyms were used during instruction alongside with identifying parts of speech and subbing out prefixes and suffixes and using words in a sentence effectively. Students were assessed based on their ability to use synonyms accurately in a sentence or in context. This study summarized by stating that regardless of the method chosen for instruction, students must be given more time to learn the new material and revisit what they've already learned and be able to demonstrate their abilities learned. Based on my own experiences as well as information I've taken away from these articles, I believed it's best to teach synonyms and antonyms in a variety of ways. By doing so, the teachers are expanding on their students' vocabulary knowledge and deepening their understanding of the words. When introducing new vocabulary, using visuals, auditory, or kinesthetic methods will be beneficial for all your students. Just like the graphic organizer I showed earlier, it was a great way for students to plan out and organize their thoughts. I found a game online that would work well with supplementing students in understanding synonyms and antonyms. The teacher prepares a set of synonyms or antonyms based on what the lesson will be about. So for this example, we're going to focus on synonyms. On the index cards that you find, you will write 2 different synonyms, but in different colors. So on this one I have sad and unhappy. So these 2 words are synonyms of each other, but the reason for writing them in different colors is so that when you tell the students to go find their match, they know that 2 reds can't go together and 2 blues can't go together. So you can use any colors really, but you distribute the cards and tell them to find their match. So then you go over it as a whole class once everyone's found their match and review and make sure everyone has found a synonym, or if the lesson's about antonyms, found an antonym. Another lesson I found focused on expanding and introducing synonyms to students in order to enhance their writing and speaking language. This lesson begins with the teacher demonstrating overuse of an adjective. So, for example, the teacher can write a few lines on the board saying, "This party was great, the food was great, and the music was great." The students can easily identify that the overused word was great. Then you can have students brainstorm other ways to say great and explain that the party was great and explain that the food was great. This is a fun way to spice up the writing and make things more interesting to read. And the next part of this lesson calls for students to think of movies and books that they have read. I really like this idea because it calls on students what they already know, so something they can personalize and they select. So the students can change the title of the book or movie based on if the lesson's going to be about synonyms or antonyms. So an example of this would be if we're doing a lesson on antonyms and we have the title James and the Giant Peach. You could say that you're changing the title to James and the Tiny Carrot, because the antonym of giant could be tiny, and then an antonym for peach, since peach is a fruit, could be maybe a vegetable, so a carrot. So you change James and the Giant Peach, the antonym, switch it to James and the Tiny Carrot. This could be really silly and could be kind of fun with students, so I think they'd enjoy that lesson. And so overall, assessing one's synonym and antonym vocabulary will provide the teacher with their basic level of understanding for words. There's a variety of ways to assess synonyms and antonyms, and it can be based on the student being assessed. This can be altered and fairly easy to benefit the student. We see vocabulary being assessed in standardized tests regularly, so assessing in your classroom can be an easy way to alter your further instruction based on what they know or don't know. Encouraging the use of synonyms and antonyms will deepen a student's understanding and broaden their vocabulary, and it will also add more flavor to their writing pieces. Thanks for listening to my assessment tool presentation on synonyms and antonyms.